We welcome everybody. There is a VA Veterans event going on at Timpview High School that is still going on, and so many of them have to be excused. A few of them were able to be here, so we thank you that you're here. Every year, the Marine Corps, as do the other services, celebrate the anniversaries of their founding. And for the Marine Corps, this is our 247th year, founded in November 10 today, but only in 1775. And we have a few traditions, and often it's with the bagpipes for very large social gatherings, and it's a warm experience to have you here. So I want to thank Robert Baxter, Vera Hamilton, and Felix Gonzalez. Felix Gonzalez. Of note, Felix served 4 years in the Marine Corps, as well as now he continues to serve us this way. So thank you for serving us today. But anyway, before we get started with the actually the very simple ceremony, we always recognize this event with a birthday cake, and it's cut with a military sword, either a staff NCO or an officer sword, depending on the occasion. Today I brought mine. The sword was also used by my son Luke, who is here with us with his two boys, who served 5 years in the Marine Corps and finished up as a Marine captain. Yeah. But I wanted to say a couple things first, and that is we celebrate events like this because history means a lot, particularly to the military services, because there's a lot of sacrifice given away. Wednesday, we read a resolution of which I think there are still some copies on some of these tables about the meaning behind Veterans Day and why we have it and why we wanted to recognize it and why the Commission passed a resolution Wednesday in that memory. But many millions have died. And of Americans so far, about 650,000 have died that I know of this so far since World War I. And of course, there's probably many others prior to that. They leave families, they leave loved ones. Some leave even before they finish high school. My dad, at the end of World War II, signed up when he was still 15. He lied about his age, went in as an MP, and a month after he turned 16, he deployed to Germany as an MP guy out there in that country. I forgot where he said he served. But I remember asking, so did you get any battle scars, any wounds? He says, yes, I tripped down the gravel and cut the tendon, so that's why the finger never bends. So there are others who've lost a great deal, both physically and mentally. And that's one of the reasons why I hold this. These are usually occasions where they're very positive, very upbeat, because there is history behind it. And the men and women who give away so much, including their families, do this in recognition for the sacrifices to defend this nation, but the rights of everyone. We're not world's police, but when the country calls for help, they generally send the Marines and their particular strong forces in first. And so we want to recognize them, and having memories like this to remember why we exist is important. So to go back in November 10, 1775, Congress passed a resolution to create the Marine Corps. It was the third resolution. Prior to it was the United States Army, and then the Navy, and then the Marine Corps. And it's famous because it was founded in a Tun Tavern, so a bar. And some of the guys were sober and some were not. And some of them that were not were shanghaied. Basically, they were pressed into service, what we now call slavery. But that happened in the Navy, that happened in the Army, that happened in the Marine Corps. But that's how we were founded. But again, we recognize why we exist. And we exist to ensure that the strength of the nation is in the Marine Corps. We honor the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, now the Space Force. But we have tremendous emphasis to make sure that we as a Marine Corps are united. Whether you're men or women, tall or short, whatever, male or female. A long time ago they said there's no black or white or yellow or red. There's only dark green and light green Marine. So that's what I grew up with in the Marine Corps. We're all one and the same. And so to celebrate that heritage, that uniqueness, and that purpose, we enjoy having these birthday balls, and we have them every single year, all the 247 years. I won't read the entire thing, but General Lejeune read the first one. And also November 1st, actually, is when he posted it, but he was the 13th Commandant. The Commandant is the #1 guy that runs the entire Marine Corps, 4-star, well, at the time, 2-star. But the Commandant is the guy who runs the entire Marine Corps. But he published on November 1st, 1921, and directed that a reminder of all the honorable service of the Corps be published in every command to all Marines throughout the globe on the birthday of the Corps. And since that day, Marines have continued to distinguish themselves on many battlefields and foreign shores in war and peace. And on this birthday of the Corps, therefore, in compliance with the will of the 13th Commandant, Article 38 of the United States Marine Corps Manual, edition 1921, is republished as follows. On November 10, 1775, a Corps Marine was created by a resolution of the Continental Congress. Keep in mind, it's a year before the Declaration of Independence. And since that date, many thousands of men have borne the name of Marine. In memory of them, it is fitting that we who are Marines should commemorate the birthday of our Corps by calling to mind the glories of its long and lustrous histories. The record of our Corps is one which will bear a comparison with the most famous military organizations in the world. In every battle and skirmish since the birth of our Corps, Marines have acquitted themselves with great distinction, winning new honors on each occasion until the term Marine has come to signify all that is the highest in military efficiency and soldierly virtue. The inspiring message of our 13th Commandant has left its mark in the hearts and minds of the Marines by deed and act from Guadalcanal to Iwo Jima, from Incheon to Korean armistice, and interventions from Lebanon to the Dominican Republic, and from the opening battles in Vietnam and Mayaguez rescue. I remember the Mayaguez rescue. I was in Okinawa. And we were put on high alert at that time. That was in 1976. Marines have continued to epitomize those qualities which are their legacy. The success which they have achieved in combat and the faith they have borne in peace will continue. The Commandant and our many friends have added their hearty praise and congratulations on this, now our 247th birthday. When we talk about glories, we're talking about the grit, the steel in a man and woman's spine. We don't talk about the glories necessarily of the bloodletting, the killing, the horror. We talk about the glories of what it forged in these men and women that have grown through the centuries. And that's what we mean by that. And to see the uniforms here today, we're grateful that you're here. Today, we have now November 10, 2022, the Commandant from General Baxter. 70 years ago, the Army Major General Frank E. Lowe was quoted as saying, "The safest place in Korea was right behind a platoon of Marines. Lord, how they could fight." That's why they're called devil dogs, because they got so unstoppable that it scared even the opposite forces. That testimony rings as true now as it did then, and will remain so tomorrow. As we celebrate the 247th anniversary of our Corps founding, reflect on nearly two and a half centuries of exceptional proudness, while also taking the objective stock of where we are today and how we will prepare for future battlefields. Our birthday provides us a chance to focus on one thing common, that our success in the past, present, and future, the individual Marine. Victories are not won because of technology or equipment, but because of our Marines. Since 1775, Marines have fought courageously and tenaciously in every conflict of our country. Through the Revolution, the Spanish-American War, wars in Europe and Pacific, conflicts in Korea and Vietnam, the operations in the Middle East, Marines consistently earn a reputation as the world's elite fighting force. We inherit and take in every pride in this reputation, evolved over time by Marines acquitting themselves with honor and distinction on every battlefield and every climb and place. Battlefields change, and Marines have always adapted to the environment and the changing character of war, But the reason we fight and win is immutable. It's the individual warfighters and their love for each other that makes our Corps formidable as a force today as it has been for the last 247 years. It's our ethos and our unapologetic resolve to be the most capable and lethal fighting force that sets us apart from the rest. Current events around the world remind us that peace is not guaranteed. While we are justifiably proud of our past and pay tribute to the remarkable warfighters who came before us, we understand that the stories of yesterday cannot secure our freedom tomorrow. And as an aside, that's true for every American. What our Americans and our forefathers have done for us before will mean nothing if we don't do something ourselves today, in whatever where you find ourselves. We must be ready to respond when our nation calls. It falls on Marines who are in uniform today to write the next chapter of our Corps. The solemn responsibility of maintaining our illustrious warfighting legacy rests upon your shoulders. I know that you're up to the task. The battlefields of tomorrow are uncertain. The future characteristics of warfare are uncertain. But one thing is certain: wherever Marines are called, they will fight and win today, tomorrow, and in the future. Happy birthday, 247th birthday, Marines. And that was signed by General Berger, who is our current Commandant of the Marine Corps. General Berger has taken the Marine Corps in a step that has often wondered, do we do that? But he's taken the Marine Corps to make it so it's not just a few of the Marines that are becoming the pointy end of the sword, but it's the entire Marine Corps. He's reshaping the entire force. And we will see where that leads. But we want to recognize those who have served in the past and are currently serving in a variety of ways. I'll point out a few here. Robert Baxter, one of the pipes, he served in the CIA. I don't know if you know that or not, but he was a purchasing officer, right? Finance officer? Finance with the CIA. So he still every once in a while will disappear when I'm looking for him, and he's hard to find. And Felix next to him, the drummer, Gonzalez, served in the Marine Corps also for 4 years. And we pay tribute for them for being here, and for Vera for being here. Is she still here? Oh, there she is, up there, Vera. She and her husband have been serving in the Army for some time. Her husband principally, but she and her parents have been in the Army, Air Force, and so there's a lot of roots there. And so we thank you, Vera, for being there. You're becoming a CIA agent, I can already see that. We also have with us, my eyes are going bad. Let me start with the Marines first, but we also have with us Captain Luke Sakovich, would you stand, who served in, signed mostly in Camp Pendleton, California, but served in Iraq. We have Corporal Felix Gonzalez there again with the drums. We have Les Langford, Vietnam, and Okinawa. He served way back when. And we have Alex Redmond, excuse me, one of our county employees. Please stand for a second. And a Marine captain. And we have Gunny Gary Campbell, Vietnam.
Vietnam and Cuban crisis.
Cuban crisis. I remember that when I was still down this size.
I'm an old man. Could go anyway.
But
26 years service.
So for them. Then I'd like to know is Richard Thayer. Are you here, Captain Richard Thayer? He's U.S. Navy, Alaska and stateside. He's in the medical profession. Specialist Lisa Duckford. Are you here? There she is, right here. U.S. Army, Fort Stewart, Georgia. Ellie Dutcher, specialist in the Army for 6 years, Fort Riley, Kansas. Here you are. Stand up when I call your name. Tech Sergeant Coy Miller, are you here? U.S. Air Force? Way in the back end. Fly high, not back there. We have Randy Edwards, Command Sergeant Major, the Army Guard, Special Forces, Army Reserve and the Special Forces. He has just been recently been selected to be the National Vice Chair of the American Legion for 2023 and 2024. So we want to say thank you to Randy. Randy is also the focal point for everything that's happened today and has been for several years, and his offices are up there.
Doing it for Utah County and the state of Utah.
Yep. And who else we have here? I think we got everybody.
And yourself. Oh, yeah, you should have just got a second. When you're done tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I served for 30 years in the Marine Corps. So,
And rank of.
well, I made staff sergeant.
And.
After BYU, I made lieutenant colonel.
Just a little bit.
Gunny?
He's so marvelous.
I love serving, and that's maybe why I got addicted to the Marine Corps. When I went to BYU after 4 years enlisted, I made E5 on the active duty, and the year after I got to BYU, my wife came up this sidewalk to greet me. She had this brown envelope, and I just thought, who in the Marine Corps is asking for Tom? We got out of the Marine Corps a year before, and she had already opened it. And she says, hello, Staff Sergeant, gave me a kiss. That's how I got promoted, on the street in Provo, with a kiss on my way from BYU to home. Long time ago. Robert.
Sorry to interrupt. If I could take just a moment. I was not a Marine. My uncle was. If you know your Marine Corps history, one of the first engagements, foreign engagements for the Marine Corps was way back in about 1803, I believe, under Thomas Jefferson. The Marines he dispatched them to fight the Barbary pirates in Libya. And my understanding is there's a couple of fallen Marines that are buried there to this day. I had the opportunity about 10 years ago to travel to Libya, and I was able to tour the compound of Muammar Gaddafi, who had been recently dispatched as well. So his compound, his palace was in rubble, so I was able to pick up a few pieces of it. So I have a piece here that I'd like to give to the Commissioner. So you can have a little memento, quite literally, from the shores of Tripoli.
Thank you. And you know what? It's sharp. I might be able to use it. Thank you, Robert. That's very generous of you. I appreciate your thinking of that. I was going to introduce the shores of Tripoli in a few minutes when we get ready to cut the cake. The sword I will use, there's a staff NCO sword, and then there's an officer's sword. The officer's sword is shaped to be very similar to the one that was captured from the leader of the forces in Tripoli. Tripoli is in, the port of Tripoli is in Libya, yes, and there was a war in 1802 first, the Marines were part of, with the naval vessels there in support with cannon, and then in 1804. And when we captured it, the leader there surrendered his sword, and from that point, we forged the sword for officers to look like it since then. So I have mine here that Luke used while he was on active duty, and so we kind of continue using it.
O'Bannon, that was over the Marines that stormed Tripoli. Presley, was it Presley O'Bannon? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Christy O'Bannon, yes. So again, the Marine Corps has this thing about history because it defines where we are today. If we don't know where we came from, we don't know why we are what we are today, and it helps us look at ourselves and say, this is where we can improve going forward. So we're constantly doing that. And so that's another reason why I fell in love with the Marine Corps. So thank you again, Robert, for this. With that, There won't be any dancing like we have in formal balls afterwards, unless you choose to do that, well, to the tunes of our pipers. But what we'll do next is go to cutting of the cake, which is here. And it was donated by Craig, who's not here. I hope he'll be here.
He had another engagement at a senior citizens home.
Oh, okay, okay. All right, well, thank you. But with that, tradition has it that has always been that for a birthday, the youngest Marine in the company at the time is identified, and the oldest Marine is identified at the time. And that person, the host, then cuts the cake with the officer sword, and then gives the first piece of the cake to the oldest, and then the oldest receives the second piece of cake from the host, who then gives that piece of cake to the youngest, symbolizing the past, carrying on forward into the future, the traditions of the Marine Corps and what we value. So with that, we'll go ahead and start the cake. Randy, help me with this. So our oldest Marine, Gary Campbell, gunnery sergeant, Vietnam for 26 years service altogether.
Part of it was Army.
Part of his Army? We won't hold that against you. Sorry, Randy. And the youngest is our drummer, Felix Langford, Corporal. Served in, got the wrong name here, Felix Gonzalez. And worked at the Marine Corps Air Station New River. Felix is, I didn't ask for your dates, but Gary, Gunnery Sergeant Campbell is 79 years old and Corporal Gonzalez is 25 years old. So with that, we'll go ahead and start it.
I had to say something real fast.
Sure.
This is my second time to be able to get a piece of cake on a Marine Corps birthday. On 27 October 1960, on my 17th birthday, I was sworn into the Marine Corps, and that night I was a Marine Corps recruit depot, San Diego. DI chewing me up one side and the other, told me I was too young, I shouldn't be there. I was shaking like a leaf, thinking, what in the hell have I done? But it was done. But 2 weeks later, I was out in the middle of it as a young recruit, out in the middle of Fray Field, scared to death, didn't know what was going on, because I was the youngest Marine there. And they cut me a piece of cake and offered it to me. I took it and I ate it. Come to find out that was a mistake. Got back to my unit. My DI called me into the Quonset hut and laid into me because young recruits do not eat pogie bake. That is sweets, and I paid for it. But I wondered what would have happened if I'd have threw the cake down and refused it. I couldn't win.
It'd been much worse.
Yeah.
So with that, I'll get the sword. And I'll get a few forks. That's true, we should just use our fingers.
Protocol if you don't walk between flags.
Thank you, I'll just take the sword. Again, this is the sword from Tripoli. What piece do you want, Gunny? Oh well. Gunny?
Nice steak. So can you hold it? This is from Agent Orange, Vietnam. The shaking is. I'm embarrassed.
Excuse my fingers. You can take a bite. You want a
I was
bite?
never allowed to take a bite.
Okay.
John Holden. This is from Agent Orange, Vietnam, and I can't control it sometimes. So thank you.
And I have one of those. So again, we won't have dancing today unless you choose to, and the remaining minutes that the pipers will pipe. But in the meantime, if you like a piece of cake, you're welcome. We have had enough for everyone, and so we invite you to have a piece and take it back to your homes, to your office, and take an extra 2 or 3 with you as well if you like. So thank you very much for coming. This concludes the event. Thank you.